Hello, and welcome to this History and Elections, where today I'm going to be covering the recent Massachusetts Senate primary, which is held on the 1st of September, and the results have came in about 6 or 7 hours ago, and they say that Ed Markey, the incumbent 74-year-old senator, has defeated his 39-year-old challenger, Joe Kennedy III. And it is quite an important thing because, say, you look about 1 year ago, this race was going to Joe Kennedy. All the polls had him double-digit lead. The Kennedy M was going to shine through and continue the winning streak in Massachusetts. However, 1 year later, Ed Markey is going to be going back to Washington 6 years, and Joe Kennedy has ended the family winning streak in the state of Massachusetts. Now, this is quite incredible, really, given that we're going to go over to the votes now. And 662,000 for Ed Markey, 55.5% of the vote, compared to Joe Kennedy's 530,000 and 44.5. From someone who was leading in the polls by double digits to lose by just about double digits, 10 points, is quite a remarkable fall down, especially within the last few months. He was still leading. It might have been 5 or 6 points at that point, but he was still leading consistently in polling. And within the last 2 months, it has completely fallen down. Now, if you look at the map, it's quite consistent across the north of Massachusetts, as well as, the Boston area, which essentially won Ed Markey this race. It was all for the incumbent. And if there's, you have the odd portion in the center, some large towns like Worcester, Lau, and Springfield all go for Kennedy, as well as the area that he represents in the House, which is this southeastern portion of the state. And I think what is the most important thing to look at this map is not, the counties, because some of these have maybe 200 votes between them, whereas, Boston County has almost 150,000. The size of the lead is where this is going to be really important. And, throughout the entire state, it's quite, evenly spread, quite tight, within 10 points. You go to Boston, and that is not the case. 20 points, 50, almost 30 points. This is quite incredible, this huge lead that Ed Markey created in the Boston area, where a majority of the Massachusetts population lives and resides. He easily won this vote, and despite Kennedy doing well in the large towns outside of Boston, he, and as well as the area that he represents in the House, he could not overcome those huge losses in the Boston area where most of the people live. And I think what's important to look at this race is the change that happened within a year, or if you even want to say it, the last 3 or 4 months. So Kennedy, a world-renowned political name, known for New England politics, especially in New England. The Kennedy name had never lost in Massachusetts. And as soon as he announced he was going to run against the incumbent Ed Markey, who really, not many people had an opinion of, there was, he wasn't hated, he wasn't unpopular, but he was just that one senator that no one really knew much about. It was all Elizabeth Warren, she's been running for president, etc. But yeah, he only had a quarter of the vote. Of course, there's quite a lot of undecideds at this point. Maybe about a third of the electorate have not made their mind up. But these polls consistently go for Kennedy. Some up to 17 points, and some as low as 1 point. But almost average consistency for Kennedy winning. This all changes. 11.2 average for the last month, from the end of July to the end of August, and a lot of consistency in the polling. It completely flips around June, June time. This completely flips. See, 16 points completely goes to a 3 point lead within the space of about 2 months. And all these polls have Markey up by double digits, except Data for Progress, which is the Democratic one, and most likely going to be going for the establishment type, which would be Joe Kennedy in this point. But what is most important about this election is not exactly who wins it, because when it comes to it, this election is going to be won by Ed Markey in November, because the Republicans have really lost all footing in the state, Senate-wise, especially since Elizabeth Warren defeated the Republican incumbent back in 2012. And there's only going to be a Democratic senator for the state. But it depends what type of Democrat you're looking at. This is a huge win for the progressives. There's, been, I think Ed Markey decided that, he saw his polls and he thought, I'm going to fight for the progressive vote exactly because the last 2 years, progressive vote nationwide, not just in New England, has been doing extraordinarily well. And he pandered to those voters. He was a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, high-profile progressive sponsor, endorsement from AOC. Compared to Joe Kennedy, who's getting endorsements from people like Nancy Pelosi, you can see that was a much more ideologically divided race, this one, than a lot more based on the character. Otherwise, people would probably say, "Oh, Joe Kennedy, the Kennedy family has always been in charge of Massachusetts, and that's the way it should be." That obviously did not happen on Tuesday. And I think it's important to look at the other races that happened today because Richard Neal, the Ways and Means Committee chairman, he's been in Congress for 30 years and he did win against his progressive challenger the other day. However, Jamal Bowman and Cory Bush had been, quite high profile progressives fighting against other high profile Democrats, have defeated their incumbents and won their races. So it's not a complete loss for the establishment Democrats, but I think this is in recent American history, it might be the entirety of American history, the most incumbents that have lost their renomination bids, which is very interesting. I think there's a lot of pushback on the fact that corporate PACs and huge multi-million-dollar spending in these pretty local races have been challenged by grassroots campaign and funding, and it has worked out very well for these challengers, especially those who do not meet the status quo. That quite a lot would, quite a lot who would classify these high-profile Democrats, especially ones like Richard Neal. They're quite boring, and the progressive challengers have come out on top, and especially in Massachusetts, which I've just covered. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all again soon.